Welcome everyone again to Thriving in Disruption, 6 Pathways to Future-Proof Your Coaching Practice. My name is Kate. I'm COO of Wisdom Works. We are a social enterprise that helps leaders, organizations, teams apply the science of thriving for the benefit of all of us so we can really create a well world. And I am joined today by our CEO, Renee Moorefield, who founded this company over 25 years ago and was doing this work before really thriving was a word that we used in workplaces. And so we're really eager to kind of share the framework that has come out of our work in the world and what leaders and coaches have really shared with us, worked with us, collaborated to emerge into this way of working in which we help other organizations do the same. So I'm going to hand it over to Renee for the first part of our session today. And if you're ever, engaged, we want this to be very personalized. So please use the chat, come off mute, and really engage with us and ask your questions.
Thanks so much,
Renee, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. And it's great to see you all. And when you show up to a session like this with that title, you're obviously interested in what does it mean to thrive? What is the science of thriving, and how can I use that within my coaching practice and in my own life? So that is why we're here. And to dive in, first off, I want to welcome the couple of people that just joined. So Veronica, Mariella, welcome to the session. To dive in, we're going to dive right into an activity, and that is for you to put into chat, what are the disruptions? So it's the title, Thriving in Disruption. What are the disruptions and challenges that you or the people you're serving, the people you're coaching, the organizations that you're working with, what are the disruptions and challenges that we're facing right now? So if you wouldn't mind putting some of those into chat, and we're going to talk about those. What are you finding? I can tell you on my end that I haven't been in a coaching conversation lately where someone doesn't bring up AI. So Kate put AI. Thank you, Kate. We're thinking just alike. Or something politically that's, in the world that's happening, that's making things very turbulent in the world and feeling very stressed about that. What else? Hybrid work environment, AI, trust issues. Great. Great. What else? A rising generation trying to find their path for life. Uncertain times, no clue to do know what to do next. Great. What else? Mental and physical well-being. Fantastic. Great. Great. Jay, I wonder if you would say just a sentence before, especially before your HVAC people arrive, about hybrid work environment. How are you finding that as a challenge?
I think, and I've been attending other things this week for coaching week, and I've heard a lot of people talking about the need to belong.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm noticing is it's harder to build that connection in the workforce, especially if someone is completely remote.
Yeah.
Oftentimes people tell me that they're having a hard time connecting because they're not in the office, even though they don't really want to be in the office necessarily, but they're noticing as a result of that that they're not connected. And I'm sorry, that's more than a sentence.
That's great, though. That's great. And in fact, we just posted recently some fabulous work by Gallup that talked about remote workers actually being more productive and engaged, but less connected and not thriving overall in their lives overall. So totally fits with what you're saying. How about David, the rising generation trying to find their path for life and work? Can you give us what that means to you?
Hi, good morning. It's good to see everybody. Yeah, I was just thinking about the young people in my life, my own kids who have graduated from college and have started their careers, and their friends, and the younger folks in our organization. And um, even though they might have college degrees or they might be pursuing classes, it seems to be taking a while for some of them to find what they really want to do and get going in the world of work.
Yeah, yeah. And they're depending on where you are, what nation you're in. I know that what I hear in the United States is often there was a promise of this in our nation, and now a generation saying, wait a minute, the country's not meeting up to its own promises for the younger generation. So that's really great, David. Thank you. Karen, can you say a little bit about layoffs?
Sure. Many of the, well, particularly right now in biotech, many of my clients are in biotech. Lots of layoffs, and then the people that are still remaining in the organization, the work that the other folks that are leaving were doing just gets piled on to the folks that are still remaining without really consideration of how much is already on their plate. It's this idea of just do it anyway.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And that's a lot of stress
A
and
lot.
of potential burnout on
Yeah.
the way there too.
Yeah.
Thank you, Karen. Rix, can you say something? You've got a couple of them here, mental and physical well-being and searching for meaning for humanity and losing hope.
Yeah, big words, I'm afraid. But I do find that now that maybe also younger generations, so nieces, nephews, also our oldest who's now 18, about to start college. There is, there is this kind of maybe disappointment, almost like we have to fix, it's upon us, right? And how do we get into this mess? Where do we start? So it's almost like and then my parents, baby boomers, also, kind of being pessimistic about, at the end of our lives, here it's where we are, like almost in search for a new story, or maybe we're in between stories of what is humanity about, and what is actually and this is a big question, but what is a good life?
Mm-hmm.
It looks like it's a different question than, or maybe we're looking for different answers than we did maybe 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, there's this kind of liminal phase of how to navigate best in this new world.
Yeah, boy, there is so much you said there, and I can literally feel it in my chest. The constriction in my chest of people, and my senses in all generations having a sense of why are we here? Why are we here? What is the story that we've been perpetuating? What is the story we want to live into? How do we want to be together? Do we want to be together? How do we want to be together? So beautiful. Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's beautiful and it's heartbreaking, right? So that's why I also signed up for this. Like, how can I be with it, right? How can I be with my clients who also maybe sometimes bring in these bigger questions? Because I think it requires more from us, also around being resilient, and how do we thrive in times like this? Well, that's what the title said. So that's why I signed up.
Well, I can promise you that there'll be some pathways here and not the answer. There will not be the answer. Alexander, you had a comment here about uncertain times, no clue about what to do. Can you say a little bit about that?
I guess we are all living in uncertain times right now. Well, my clients usually says, well, not really says, but express some lack of hope, as Rixty said, and they are just doing all the things without any direction, so they don't know where to go right now. Yeah, they are just trying to keep going on, but it's a very low hope for anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. So I want to pause for a moment and I just want you to notice, literally do a simple internal scan. I'm not going to take you through a practice here, but I want you to do, your skilled coaches, do an internal practice. Just notice the effects of even this discussion on your body, on your mind, on your emotional state, on your energy, on your spirit, on your whole being. Just notice what you notice. And I'd love to hear just a couple of comments about what you notice. Just a simple scan there. What do you notice? I mentioned I could feel my chest contracting. When I really step into this place of no hope, I can feel my chest contract. Who else? Jay?
I feel it usually in my stomach area.
Yeah. What do you
Like
notice?
kind of well, that's where I feel stress the most.
Okay.
But at the same time, I also feel good about being able to acknowledge. So it's a strange combination. I'm feeling the stress, but I'm also feeling a little bit alleviated because we're acknowledging the problems that need to be solved.
Great. Great. But you know that you have you have a clear signal of in your stomach area,
Yes.
your stress. Great. That's good to know. Kate mentioned a sense of heaviness, just feeling a sense of heaviness. David, how about you?
Yeah, I'm not sure what I'm feeling in my body, but I kind of like was mentioned, just being here with some other professionals in this space, I find very optimistic and hopeful. So,
Great.
we're kind of here together. So that's a good thing, and happy to be here. And so, yeah. And also the challenges that have been listed, I don't think I've heard anything new, shocking, or surprising. It's kind of things, that seem familiar or that have been with us. And so I feel hopeful and excited to be here.
Great. Great. Who else? Anyone else want to share just what they notice when they start to really step into the challenges and disruptions in this conversation? Rix?
Yeah, I just shared in the chat. I just felt this interesting mix of like loss, grief, sadness. I had goosebumps. My eyes started to tear up.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also felt my heart space, like, oh, I'm so grateful, sense of gratitude to be able to be just joining in this circle and share and become aware of actually what I'm noticing.
Beautiful.
So it was an interesting, I don't know what my nervous system was waking up about that, but interesting.
That's beautiful. So I believe that there was a way of thinking about our world in the past that is fundamentally shifting. And one of the aspects that we have an opportunity to shift into is a new narrative, as Rick's brought up, a new perception of what's going on in the world. So have you all heard the term VUCA before? Everyone's here has probably heard the term VUCA. Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. That was a term developed by the US military many decades ago about what's happening in the world. But there is a new term that developed by a futurologist, Jamai Cascio, and I see David shaking his head. So some of you have maybe seen this term as well, about our Banny world, saying this is a different way of perceiving our world that actually can feel, from one sense, can put us right into a contraction unless we see that it offers opportunities for our learning and growth. So it's the Banny world. It's the world is brittle. the brittle meaning the systems and structures that we thought were so firm and so strong, with a disruption can fall apart. With some sort of disruption can fall apart. This really hits at the illusion we've had of the strength of our systems and structures in the world. So we felt like they were strong, that we could always lean into them in a particular way, and yet a disruption happens and they fall apart. So this brittleness, anxious, a sense of anxiety that happens when we realize, when we start to become an awake and aware that we are in a very complex world. There a low grade sense of, we just published actually an article about a society of kind of inflammation, a society of worry, a society of anxiety that can occur when we feel like, I don't know what to do with this. We realize that we are not in control in the way that we thought we were. So this really hits at the illusion of control. Nonlinear, we realize that the traditional way we thought of cause and effect, like if this happens, then this happens, those paradigms start to shift, and we realize the world we're living in at every level, in our lives, in our organizations, in our communities, in our cities, in our nations, across the planet. We're having nonlinear effects. So the old ways of understanding don't apply, the cause and effect understanding. And incomprehensible, it's difficult to fully understand kind of what we're in because we're needing to build new ways of knowing. So an illusion that we knew, that we had knowledge, that we were stable in that knowledge really gets turned on its head. So in this Banny world, it is easy for all of us, as well as the people that we're serving, the organizations, the teams, the leaders, anyone that we're serving, to move into a state of contraction, to move into a state of, I'm going to protect me and mine and my tribe and my possessions. I am going to shut down lines of communication instead of reach out. I am going to defend. I'm going to protect, which is what we naturally do when we are in a world that we don't fully understand and we don't have insight into. We don't have new stories yet to step into, as Rick's brought up earlier. So the question then is, what is the antidote? What can help us thrive in this kind of world? So I want to do another little practice with us. And this will be just a practice. In fact, I'm going to take the slides down just for a second here so I can see you all. And this will just be a practice of, what does thriving mean to you? What does thriving mean to you? So go ahead and get comfortable wherever you are. And if your legs are crossed, maybe uncross your legs. I'm seated today. A lot of times I'm standing when I teach because my arms like to move and my body likes to move everywhere when I'm teaching, but I'm seated today. So uncross your legs. Uncross your arms if your arms are crossed. If you feel comfortable closing your eyes, feel free to close your eyes. If for any reason you don't want to close your eyes, find a stationary point on which to rest your gaze, making that not your computer. We spend too much time gazing at our computer, I think. And for a moment, just notice, just become aware of your body in space. So perhaps if you're seated, you're noticing all the places where your body connects to the chair. You're noticing how the chair supports you without you doing a thing, that you can really rest. You can let your shoulders relax down towards the chair. You can let your hips settle into the chair. If your feet are planted on the floor, you can let your feet really rest into the floor. noticing all the places where you may be holding and allowing those for just this moment to relax. Bringing your awareness to your breath, noticing your inhalation and exhalation, and letting each breath be an opportunity to connect with yourself, your presence in the here and now. And with your next breath, bring into your awareness a memory of a time of thriving, a full aliveness for you. Now, you're not going to be sharing this memory with anyone, so let yourself go wild. It could be a moment that happened yesterday, something very simple, like noticing your dog running and playing and the joy that brought you. It could be a memory from years ago, maybe as an athlete, you were doing sports, maybe you were in a band, maybe you're with family or friends on vacation. Maybe you were with coworkers and you just kicked butt on a project. A time when you found deep joy, aliveness, meaning, maybe a sense of challenge or peace. And as you hold that memory in your awareness, notice once again any effects on your mind, your body, your emotions, your energy, your whole being. And with your next breath, I invite you to open your eyes if your eyes are closed. Now we are going to move into a small group activity. I'm just going to have 2 groups here. And what I want you to share with the person that you're with is anything you noticed from our first discussion, any changes from the first discussion to this one, and what you noticed as signals of expansion, signals of thriving, of joy, of well-being that you notice from this practice. And they can be very subtle, so they don't have to be enormous signals. It can be very subtle. And also, when you move into your small group, say hello to the person, get to know the person that you're with. Half of why we do these kinds of activities is to get to know other people around the world that are doing cool work in the world. So you'll have about 7 minutes. Does that work? And we'll bring you back, and then we'll start talking about these 6 pathways.
Any clarifying questions before we head out? Is that what we're doing? Okay. We'll see you back here in 7 minutes.
Yeah, they are smiling, so this is a good sign. This is a good sign. So tell me about the conversation. What did you notice as signals of thriving, signals of well-being in that moment? When I asked you to imagine a memory or recall a memory or step into a memory, what did you notice? Body, mind, emotions, energy. David.
Well, I was telling my group that the first thing I noticed is I need a new chair. And you're saying think about this and I say, okay, this is ridiculous. I need to take action and
Yeah.
go get a new chair. But and I was thinking about, I've had this chair for years and I put up with it and try to make accommodations with pillows and other things. And I was like, this is ridiculous. So thank
But
you.
David, that is like a metaphor though.
Yeah,
A
yeah.
lot of things we do is put up with things for very long, that things that we know are not working for us anymore. I mean, that's perfect as a metaphor.
Yeah.
But as you did the practice, did you notice anything when you stepped into a memory of thriving, or was that difficult to do because of your chair?
Oh, it was fine. It was okay.
Okay. What else did you all notice as far as signals of well-being in the moment, growth in the moment, sense of challenge in the moment when I asked you to do that activity?
I decided to lie down.
Yeah.
I just felt like doing it. I want to be more loyal to my body. So try to listen. So I lie down, and there were several moments that came to mind, and I just shared in our little group. There's doing things that I truly love. After also being with others. So there was a moment of being close to the ocean, like big waves, and feeling the wind in my face and the sand in my feet. And but there's also a little moment last Monday evening. It was a beautiful spring evening, and my family, with 5 of us, decided to have, just ice cream and strawberries. Just something small, but it just felt nutritious and just grateful to be together. And yeah, so there is this, and I like being alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I need those moments of connection to thrive.
Beautiful. Thank you, Rix. Jay, you had unmuted for a sec.
I was going to say I was glad that you said that it could be subtle, because that really helped me lean into this. And I'll share that I am someone who's a very new coach. I'm working. I've passed through my level 1, but I need to take the exam. So one of my areas of growth is trying to connect with myself more. And we had some discussion, interestingly, in our group about, I was the only coach in our group. So not everyone here is a coach. And so this is something that a number of us are still learning. So
Yeah.
the key for me was when you said subtle. And I did notice just a very subtle lightening where I was like, when I talked about after the first activity, it was a pressure in my stomach.
Yeah.
Very subtle change there, but a noticeable change because you said, look for subtle.
Great. That is great. And by the way, fantastic as a kind of a step in self-knowledge of what's happening with my state of being. What state of being am I in this moment? Because whatever state of being you're in, I'm in, we're in, is radiating to the people that we're working with. And the people that we're radiating to our family, radiating to our neighbors, radiating to. So as you're working with that client, your state of being is naturally showing up with you. There's no way it can't. And that means body, mind, spirit, energy, however you want to name it, all of that is showing up. That's great. That's great. And in a state of expansion, so I talked earlier about contraction around this BANI world, BANI. In the state of expansion, we know from science, we also know from experience, that is when we are in our cognitive and emotional best. That is when we can be most present with people. That's when we can be most present to ourselves. That's when we can be most creative and innovative. That's when we can let our mind wander to new possibilities and imagine in a BANI world where many people feel stuck and feel contracted. One of the biggest gifts we can provide as coaches is to show up ourselves thriving in the same world as they're in, to show up ourselves thriving, and to support them to see options that they could not see before, because we help them support them in learning how to shift in an expansive state of being.
Is this why I hear a lot of very experienced coaches saying that you have to work on yourself first?
Yes. Yes. And it's always an interesting, for me, that's always an interesting, we're getting way off. And I love this, by the way. Like,
Okay,
I
so I was
plan to
gonna say,
talk about
sorry.
this, but I love it. No, this is where it's like, okay, here we go. Yes. I think it's a yes and, because there's an idea I think we've had in the coaching community, but also in the leadership community and the larger world. You've got to put your oxygen mask on first before you take care of everybody else. And yes, as a principle, I think that's fabulous. But I think we're at a place where it's often a both and. We are sometimes the best way to put your own oxygen mask on, and we're going to talk about this when we talk about these 6 pathways, is serving others. Serving something greater than ourselves actually helps us, actually helps you and me ground in a place of deeper purpose and deeper well-being. So it's a both and we'll talk about those pathways in a second. When you are in this state of expansiveness, I can tell you from the physiological science that every one of your systems of the body, cardiovascular, hormonal, digestive, and everything else, nervous system, all of it operates more effectively. All of it operates in a way that is more effective, more efficient for your health and well-being. So it's that important in this kind of environment for us to be prioritizing how in this world that we can perceive as unpredictable, as, oh my gosh, it's fragile, as how can we thrive in the middle of it through shifting our mindsets, through fueling ourselves well, and through re-looking at what are the opportunities here. It's from that state of expansiveness that in this Banny world, we're going to be able to see this provides opportunity for our growth and evolution. This very world we're in is providing us an opportunity for growth and evolution. So I want to shift for a moment. I would love for Kate to share with you what's happening kind of across the world from some statistics for those of you. I don't know if anyone here is like me and kind of a nerd about science and statistics, but she's going to show you some of that. And then we're going to come back and talk about the 6 pathways.
Yeah. And so this is a way to kind of expand, and we've been focused on kind of the challenges that we're all feeling and our sense of thriving. And so I just wanted to show you that you're not alone in feeling this. So our world is expressing itself as feeling this Banny world. Here's some stats that we've pulled together that kind of express this. So just I'll call out a few, but 44% of global workers say that the workplace causes them too much stress. So we mentioned earlier those that are getting laid off, and then the others have to take on the burden of that. We're feeling that stress. The stats out there, the science is showing we are feeling the effects of this kind of world. 50% of the global workforce would accept a pay cut to prioritize their quality of life. This Rick's put, what is a good life? We are now asking that question and being willing to make sacrifices towards the way in which we want to live. Some others not shared here, ICF actually did some recent research around coaches and what their clients are asking for. And they found that 85%, a vast majority of the coaches say their clients are asking for help with their mental well-being. And about 72% of them feel they need more training on how do I address that? How do I support my clients in their needs in this life, this world we find ourselves in? We also did some research in 2023. We published it last year, looking at leaders in the global health and wellness industry. And one of the sectors that we specifically looked at was those in human potential and development. So coaches like ourselves, educators, consultants, those who are really helping others to develop. And they reported the lowest well-being and highest stress out of all three sectors. And so what this shows to us is that there's so much potential here to tap into, to resource ourselves and come from this place of thriving. Because even with all of these stats, there is, if I can get these to change. Okay. There we go. We are also seeing a movement towards well-being. So there's also much out there that is showing we're looking for something different. We want something. We're spending, workers are reassessing what's important. We're spending our consumer dollars in wellness to help us feel better, both through our spending power. And then countries around the world, we have looked around, we've found about over 30 well-being indices in different municipalities, countries, nationalities that are looking at what does it mean to measure the well-being of our citizens? How do we add that into our community metrics and measurements and support that? There's also research now being done on connecting it to performance and profitability. So at the University of Oxford Wellbeing Research Center, they have found that those workplaces with high employee well-being see 21% higher profitability and 17% higher productivity. And with this, we are seeing, at least here in the US, a languaging around we need to be more efficient, we need to be more productive, kind of bringing back that old kind of narrative, if you will. And yet we're seeing, this research is showing, by prioritizing our thriving, our well-being, we use, at WisdomWorks, we kind of use those interchangeably, and I'll go into our definition in just a minute. But those that prioritize that actually are more effective. They are more profitable. They are more productive when these two things are focused on together. So what do we mean by thriving? So our definition, how we define it at WisdomWorks, is a sense of being internally well-resourced to meet the demands of our life and work with a sense of vitality, that joy, that deep joy that Renee mentioned earlier, a sense of competence, like I feel like I can handle this, I know what to do maybe, or I have at least a path, and sustainable growth, that this can happen over time. It's not a one-off moment that I'm pushing myself to achieve, but something that is, we're working for long-term growth and sustainability for ourselves, as well as those that we're supporting. And this, we speak about it, and Renee kind of alluded to this, but thriving for us really is a way of being. It's a way of showing up and thinking. You can think about it two ways. One, in this state, this current state, like with the practice that Renee did, you know, this way of shifting into a space of thriving. So thriving in the moment. You can do a simple grounding practice or notice, you know, the subtle cues that your body is giving you and shift into a state of thriving. But it can also be seen as a larger framework to guide your life and work. And so I'll share a personal example. Right now, I adopted a puppy. She's 11 weeks, and it's exhausting. It's so joyful, but it's also exhausting. And there have been moments where I would say, oh man, I am really not thriving right now, right? In this very moment, I am not as well resourced. I am drained mentally and emotionally, physically, and yet using thriving as a framework, I have guideposts in my life now that bring me back into states of thriving that are there throughout and not something I have to kind of think about in the moment. So I have calls with Renee. or a community I go and see. I have friends. I have moments with my husband and really being joyful with the dog. And so because I have applied it as a framework, it allows me in those moments where I'm not as well resourced to fall back into these moments of thriving more easily. And so those are two different ways that we can think about thriving. Renee, I don't know if you wanted to add anything. It looked like you might want to add something here, and then I'll go in. Okay. So just again, to also click into the research, why we think thriving is something to really be focused on, especially during this time, is because the research out there is showing that it makes a difference. It impacts really everything that can be measured within a workplace, within our lives. And I'll just double click into what this shows for us is that thriving is about unleashing our full potential. So each one of these is an avenue for us to be more creative, more alive, more effective, more productive, as I said earlier. And this is both for us as individuals, but also for our clients, their teams, our organizations. And so if we think about what Renee said in that state of expansion, this is what is possible when we are feeling. So the research is also backing up what we're saying. And there's much more research out there that we could dive into. I'll double click into one of our own. And so we, as part of that same study that I mentioned earlier, out of that study, we surveyed over 800 leaders using our framework of thriving. And what we found is that 34% of their reported impact can be explained by their personal well-being. And so what this means for us as coaches is that kind of like you said, Jay, like, is it putting my own mask on first? Like, do I need to do this work first? Or is it also those I'm supporting? And that both and, it is a reciprocal relationship here, that as we support our own well-being, we also increase our impact and our ability to serve and support our clients thriving, and vice versa. And so it is a reciprocal relationship. So as we do that, we elevate both of us, if that makes sense. And just before we kind of go into, and I open this up because I've done a little bit of talking here, just to double click into why thriving. This is why we feel this is so important, is that we have seen the both subtle ways, but also the larger shifts. And there's some meta-analysis that are being done out there that show that when we lead from this space, what they have also termed transformational leadership, it leads to lower stress, reduced burnout, and higher well-being for yourself, but also among employees. So it really creates, and it has this ripple effect outwards as we take care of ourselves. So it's both and relationship. So Renee, anything you want to add before we kind of open it up? Mm-hmm. So I'd love to hear, kind of as I went through that, what supports you in thriving right now? And we kind of touched on this a little bit when Renee had us express kind of what came up for you in your thriving moments. I heard community, moments of aloneness, maybe a new chair. So what practices or mindsets really enable you to thrive right now? What do you think, before we kind of share some of ours? Anything that come to mind? I am going to stop sharing as well so that I can see you all. Anyone want to jump in and share what Alexander, we haven't heard from you in a little bit. Do you want to share maybe a practice or a mindset that helps you kind of get into this space of feeling well resourced?
Well, when I'm helping others, I feel thriving all the times. Most of the times I'm learning something new, or getting some new insight. I feel thriving.
Yeah.
But our discussion in our little group also, I said that all the times that all the events that I felt thriving was with a lot of connection with other people.
Mm,
Never alone.
Mm.
mm. Yeah.
And I like to be alone most of the times, but I feel thriving connecting with the other people.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you. I can really relate as well, those connections and being with others and helping that, and the being of service you mentioned first. And we can see that a lot in the when I mentioned those in the human potential, we can often see that those in a more servant leadership role. So those of it's requiring us to give of ourselves within the career that we've chosen. We can experience higher stress or lower well-being often, as though we prioritize others' well-being ahead of our own.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. Jay,
Well,
what practices or mindsets?
well, it's interesting because I can relate to what he was saying in terms of I'm an introvert. And in fact, my husband and I are both INFPs. So we have been trying to be very deliberate because during the pandemic, we we had moved and we lost connection with a lot of people. So this year we're working on trying to build community. So we've connected with a church and we're being very deliberate. And I notice as we do that, initially it's hard as introverts because you're meeting new people and it's very de-energizing. But as we're building that community, I am noticing a difference in our stress level. So I think it's for me, it's a combination of community and also doing things for others.
Yeah. Thank you, Jay. And I love the word deliberate that you used, because I think that is part of what we're talking about here is this, and the uncomfortability, that, okay, there might be a little challenge initially as I build into different mindsets or practices. And yet the payoff, if you will, is that in the long term, and that is part of the conversation we have around thriving. It's not always about every moment feeling thriving. It's not a constant state, and yet in some ways it is a constant framework for our lives. We are deliberately choosing to live a life which supports my capacity to thrive, and making those decisions that might need a little more energy in the beginning, but in the long term supports us in so many more ways than just energetically even. Yeah, I really appreciate you bringing that in. Thank you. Anyone else? And then we'll shift. Want to share a practice or a mindset?
I think Rick's unmuted for a second there and then remuted. Rick, is there something you wanted to share?
Yeah, being of service, definitely. Having meaningful conversations, definitely. And dancing. To me, it's
Yes.
like on a daily basis, I would say. Yeah. I really like, Kate, how you framed it as in guideposts and a framework. Yeah, so that's super helpful. I've created also these guideposts since I got certified for the Be Well, Eat Well, which was really helpful in recognizing, what are the resources that are available to me, and what is maybe I forgot about, or just pinpointing towards aspects that I could include in my life more. And so movement, mindfulness, meaningful conversations, yeah, key.
Yeah. David, and then Alexander, I saw you raise your hand, but David, you came off mute. Did you want to add something as well?
Yeah, I was really appreciated these slides on well-being at work from the Oxford University and some of these other sources that that mirrors what I'm seeing in professional conferences and conventions. That's kind of the work I've been doing in the last several years. And for example, I used to run a large conference for attorneys. And it was very noticeable that they were starting to bring in elements to their conference of speakers about wellness and talk about that for the first time. And I thought it was really different, for them, because before that would never be a topic on their agenda, on their conference agenda. And now they got people talking about, sharing their personal journeys of wellness, and that was fascinating. And I saw that in a number of different professional association conference settings. So I think there's a huge need for that. These we were always looking for speakers who could help us with that and bring that into the conference. And so I'm very excited to see. I didn't even know Oxford had an institute on this. So that's thrilling to just know that now. Thank you. So this is great.
Yep. I'll include in the follow-up, they just released a new book, one of the main authors of that study, on really how this is happening and practices and ways of supporting that. So we can dive into that. And David, I really appreciate, I'm married to a lawyer and his whole family is lawyers. And so I know as well, that's not generally a group of people who talk about well-being as readily as maybe we are right now. And yet it's needed, because this is not unique to one industry or profession or career. It really can support. It's more about supporting our life. How are we walking each day? How are we walking through the world? And the impact and the story, going back to that story thread, what story do we want to live into? What is a good life? What does that mean for us? Alexander, you had your hand up.
Just want to make the point. You raised the point about the liberation, and normally I work a lot with the relating with what we can do, what is under our control, and not from external world and the subject from others and so on. We have to choose to thrive, to go for it. So it's an action under our control.
Yeah, I'm gonna build on that, Alexandra, and talk about these different factors, because that's exactly what we were asking a few years ago when we decided to do some look at the research and say, what is the research saying are the factors that we can choose to engage in? If thriving, as Kate has mentioned, if thriving is about our sense of showing up well-resourced to deal with whatever world we're in, well-resourced, what are those factors that we can choose to engage in that enable us to do that, to show up well-resourced? So I want to show you those factors and how it builds into these 6 pathways. So the first one we found, and we did this work with the University of Colorado, this was probably, it built up over the last 26 years of working with executives around the world in our company. But then we brought many insights that we had over working with thousands of leaders to the University of Colorado. They have Positive Organization Center in their business school here in Colorado Springs. And we wanted to make sure that we were building a framework of thriving that included and really included the science of thriving in all in one place, and was valid and reliable, was really drawing off of valid and reliable science. So the first set of factors we found was a sense of optimism. And I love that we started this conversation today about the stories that we are telling ourselves about the world and the stories, the narratives we want to step into, because optimism is all about what is the narrative I want to step into? What do I believe about my future? And if I believe my future is one that lacks hope at all, that lacks possibility, that lacks options, you can already imagine how that affects your capacity to thrive or the people that you're working with. So helping people source a sense of optimism in their life, and not fake optimism, but sense the moments in their lives where they have seen possibility, because everyone has those moments where they have seen it. That just may not be the thread that's most present in their lives. So helping them really be deliberate about the possibilities in front of them and possibilities of what we can learn through the world we're in. Optimism, very clearly important. Flourishing. Flourishing is all about having a sense of a support system, feeling respected, feeling connected to it within our lives. So we have a sense that we are living a life that matters to us, and we have a sense of connection, a support system. Resilience is about the ability to bounce back from setbacks. Every single one of us, almost every day, will have a micro setback, have something that just surprises us and goes, whoa, what was that about? Or we'll have a macro setback. We have a death in the family. We have a major loss. We have I have in my life, with all the politics happening in the world, I have gone to a place of, what is going on here? I teach all of this work, and I still am finding myself wondering what's happening in our world. So being able to return, to restore ourselves when we have a setback, that's our capacity for resilience. 4 other factors, these are ones that you might think of as wellness behaviors. So to what extent is the person you're working with, or are you eating, moving, resting, breathing consciously to help you manage your energy effectively, help you manage your stress effectively, and to optimize how you show up in life and work? These are 4 areas that in the media, these are most talked about. You know, do you have physical activity? Are you sleeping enough? We have a sleep epidemic around the world, lack of sleep. How are we eating? You know, how do you eat for your type? So these are talked a lot about in the media, but these are areas that really support you as well as the people you're working with in managing energy and managing stress well. But Kate brought up the word deliberate, but it has to be done deliberately to really notice the effects of these strategies in our life and work. The other factors we found were things like engagement at work. To what extent do you feel like, and does the client you're working with feel like they gain well-being from work? Not every moment of work, not every moment of my work is fun, even though I love what I do. Not every moment of work is fun, but there are moments, enough moments, that I can get fully absorbed and feel like this is an avenue of creative expression, or this is an avenue that's really drawing from my potential and I'm gaining energy from it. So that's engagement at work. Is that important? Self-esteem at work. To what extent do you feel valued in your work? To what extent does your client feel valued in their work? Mindfulness. What is your ability to manage your attention? What is your ability to manage your attention? So can you notice, now I'm focused, wow, now I'm distracted, now I'm creative. Can you move into different attention strategies when those are needed? A whole nother category that we found was we call wonder. This is probably for me one of my favorite. These areas are kind of my favorite 3 areas, and that is the ability to seek perspectives that are different than your own, not stay stuck in your own point of view, to learn and grow from your experiences, not just the joyful experiences, but the ones that feel that can feel like tough. Can we learn and grow through our experiences? Do we have a sense of challenge in our life? And can we bring a sense of awe to our situations? This is a huge one because awe is purposefully decentering us. So there's lots of conversations in the coaching world about being centered, moving from a place of centered. And I'm all about that. Yes, move from a place of centered. Sometimes from that place, it's great to get decentered and to realize the world does not revolve just around us. It's great to get into others' points of view and see with empathy and compassion that most people are doing the best they can with what they know. How can we bring a sense of real appreciation and awe to the people that we're serving? Some other factors that came up in this work of, what really are our resources, internal resources that enable us to thrive, were vision and purpose. That would be, what's a clear direction and a deeper why that you use to guide your life and work? If you don't know in all of these, I would start there. If I were saying of all these 19, if you asked me where to start, I would start there. What is a direction and deeper why that matters to you? And the same for the clients that you're working with. Do they know why they're doing what they're doing? Is there a larger vision guiding them? Because every moment of our lives, particularly in all the accelerated change that we're dealing with in the world and disruption, the outer world is constantly going to change. So that is not a place of security in our lives. Our security is going to come from within, knowing ourselves. So what do you want to create in your life? And why does that matter to you? Our emotional capacity, what is the extent to which we can bring a sense of lightness and tap into a range of emotions in our life and work? And wholeness, how integrated does life and work feel? Do we have a sense of where these are not playing against each other, but we have found a path of integration? And then the last factors that we found were critical pathways for supporting thriving was the ability, and it's what most of you brought up in your comments, the ability to show up in a way that we are energizing others, inspiring others, maximizing the potential and talents of others, cultivating environments where others can thrive. So this is really about serving. This is really about serving others. So all of these come together in these 6 pathways. So you all helped build the 6 pathways that we wanted to share with you. This is about mindset. It's also about behavior. So I would say, actually, if we go from top line down to the deepest, at the toppest, that's not even a word, the top line, it's about behavior. What behavior changes can we make? In what way can I actively engage in a practice of awe? So Jay, you, as an example, you mentioned that you and your husband were actively saying, what can we do to feel connected? How can we actively put these practices in place? And anytime we do that, it takes more energy first to make that happen until it becomes a behavior, a habit of ours. So at the very top, it's about behavior. These are also about mindset, realizing that all of these are internal ways of knowing ourselves that we can bring forward in our mindsets. I can bring a mindset of curiosity and awe to a situation. And then at the deeper level, the very deepest level, I would say this is about identity. Do we see ourselves as people, as human beings with the capacity to thrive? Do the people that we serve, do we believe that they already have an innate, hardwired capacity to thrive that maybe they're not living from, but it's in there? When we started this session today, I did a practice with you where you were tapping into a memory of thriving. It was in there. It was already in there. So these capacities are here as resources to bring forward in our lives and work. And when we do, as I mentioned before, it dramatically shapes our nervous system, our sense of self-regulation. It dramatically shapes our ability to show up in ways that invites and attracts and supports the thriving of others. So I'm going to stop here for a second and see what questions, because that's a lot of stuff there. What questions come up for you? Anything that just makes sense? Jay? Yeah.
You talked about there was one of the elements in a couple of slides ago that you talked about being open to new perspectives.
Yeah.
And that seems really essential this day and age, with politics being as divisive as it is.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that's sometimes a challenge for actually me as a gay person,
Mhm.
because I live in a state where the environment is not so great right now, and I
Yeah.
have family members who have a lot of issues with this. How do you, as a person, and maybe even as a coach, uh, kind of reconcile that when you're looking at this idea of being open to other perspectives?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And I think you're right. This is in our face right now. Definitely as a US nation, but I would say around the world. We travel around the world, and I would say around the world, there's a fair amount of division in lots of places. So this is a human dynamic that we're really wrestling with. And I think we have an opportunity to learn how to do this better. Like, I think that's actually the real question is, okay, how do we do this better? So we're feeling like what I mentioned before, when we are stressed and contracted, the natural reaction, not by thought, just an innate natural, is to protect what is mine, protect what is mine, protect my tribe, which is not building bridges with someone else, right? So seeking perspectives different than your own does not mean that you agree with their point of view, but it does mean knowing your own self well enough that you're able to get curious as to what their experience are, whoever it is, to get curious about another's experience, to find out more about what makes them tick and why they think as they do. I've got some members of my family who voted in a very different way than I did. And it really bothered me. At first, it still bothers me. But I've learned that the best way to connect is just to start asking questions, like to be the one that is first reaching out and asking questions and seeking something new. There is a rule of thumb in the Native American tradition in the US that I love. And to me, it's like a great principle. And it's called the rule of 7. It's when you're in a situation, step into, tell the story how you think is, what's true for you. Tell the story, like, here's the situation. Now create 6 other stories that could be true. Create 6 other stories. Sometimes you can do that alone, but most time you will need others' perspectives to create those stories to really walk around an issue. And when you do that, something shifts internally. I can tell you from experience, something shifts. You start to realize, number one, that most people have a deeper desire, as we talked about at the beginning, to belong, to connect, to feel safe, to feel loved, to feel valued, some very basics that human beings as human beings want. You start to realize that we are connected in those ways. And I hear you, because I feel like we've really lost track of those ways that we're connected. And I don't think that we will reach out to each other and we'll build bridges unless we find a place within ourselves of our own deeper well-being. It's harder to reach out when we're in a place of contraction ourselves, when we're in a place of protection ourselves. So I just rambled there, but that would be some thought.
Yeah, and I want to just double click on something that I want to be sure that we say is that, which I think Jay, you brought up, is this entire way of thinking or being is not a Pollyanna of ignoring the structures in which we live, and that those may not always be safe to explore all the ways in which we can thrive. And to know that, I think that self-awareness piece. And so it is both about understanding what system am I in, who am I in front of, the state I live in, like that culture matters. And coming from a place, especially in this banny, disruptive world, it can often be an act of courage to come from this place. And so resourcing ourselves to be able to act from that place of courage is one thing that we have available to us at any time. And yet those resources, especially the external resources, will be different for different people in whatever system and culture. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that both of the both and we're living in so many paradoxes and complexities. And so being able to hold both of those, it takes energy sometimes, and really can be an act of courage to come from this place.
So when you say that, are you saying that you can be the type of person who seeks out other perspectives from people who are different, but you can also hold boundaries if you need to?
For sure. Yeah.
Yes. And I would not advocate, I don't think Renee would either, of putting yourself into an unsafe situation.
No.
I think that's part of that self-awareness piece of knowing when is that timing right? Who can I seek those? But it's that mindset of I am open to seeking new perspectives, but they might not always be open and safe for me to engage in this situation.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for adding that, Kate. Any other questions about what we've talked about in these various pathways? We can show you how if it's interesting to you, because we have a couple more minutes, we can show you when we are assessing these pathways, how that shows up with people. Would that be helpful?
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay.
I see heads nodding.
When we are assessing these pathways, we now have a tool that we use to look at those scales, those 19 areas, those 19 factors that I showed you earlier. And it basically to support someone to see to what extent do I feel well resourced to deal with all the complexities and challenges in my life and work. So we ask questions about challenges in their life and work. And then after they take the assessment, they receive feedback to see exactly where they are. So you can see the 6 areas that are in the framework: thriving, fuel, flow, wonder, wisdom, and thriving amplified, as well as those 19 factors that I mentioned earlier. Does everyone see that? I'm seeing some head nods, so that's helping me know. Great. And what this does is helps, as we're using this assessment, it helps, number one, support a greater awareness of someone on how am I doing in my life and work. Like often they haven't looked at thriving in this way. They're looking at mental, emotional, physical well-being. They're looking at it in a bit narrower way. They're not realizing that awe and appreciation, for example, is a really strong pathway. And I can show you from the data, it's one of the highest performing pathways to people thriving is awe and appreciation, as an example. But people don't naturally think of that as, oh my gosh, I could actually put an awe practice in place. And it may seem strange to do that at first, but when I start doing it and I start noticing the effects, I realize I'm actually more fulfilled. I'm functioning better. I'm dealing with change better. I'm adapting more. I'm more resilient. So it helps them become more aware. And then it also helps them identify different pathways that make sense for their life and work. So we do not suggest when someone gets a feedback report, so that it has an 11-page feedback report, this is just a page. But when they get a feedback report, we don't suggest that they always work on an under-resourced area like Thriving Amplified, that we don't always go to the under-resourced place. We go to what is motivating to you. If there was an area in here that you feel like, you know what, if I focused on this area, I really think it would support me as a whole being, as a whole leader, or as a team. We've used this with teams as well. And invariably, just identifying that then becomes, that place comes from an internal motivation, internal locus of control, and they're more apt to stick with it. So that becomes part of their development path. In whether it's coaching work, whether it's team coaching work, individual coaching work, etc. Any questions about this? I know we only have about a minute left, but I want to make sure we end with any questions you all have just about this.
When you say this isn't an assessment, I mean, is it like a survey that people are taking?
It is. We turned that framework that I showed you earlier, this framework and these factors, as well as some additional questions around their organization, the culture of the organization, organizational change that they're dealing with, stressors in their life and work, into an assessment system, because we wanted to bring all of that together in one place. And it's 133 questions that they take, and then it takes about 20 minutes to take it, and then they get a feedback report. And then it's something that coaches then use as part of the coaching conversation to really expand the coaching conversation, normally from just effectiveness. Most people come to coaches to be more effective in an area, to really effectiveness through building their thriving capacity. So it really expands the levers you can pull as a coach and as someone that you're working with.
And over time, you would expect these numbers to change
Over time, yes, you would, if
when
someone is
you're working with them.
diligently working with someone, yes. And in fact, often if a client's willing to do it, we use it as at the start of a coaching engagement, and then at the end of a coaching engagement, say like 9 months later, depending on how long the coaching engagement, but let's say that it's a 9-month coaching engagement, we'll use it at the end as well, so that they not only, they can take stock of what changes they made and really appreciate that. We've seen when we've done that, for instance, with a brand team in a global company called Barilla. So the pasta company, most people know the pasta company, Barilla.
Yeah.
They have actually a division that's a bakery division, and we worked with their bakery division. And it worked with a 28-person team. And we were able to see, by doing a multi-month learning journey with them, providing coaching support as well as team development support, pre and post, dramatic increases in team performance, in personal thriving, and actually in the reinvention of their brand, because they started learning the science of thriving and then applying it to how they speak to and activate their brand with consumers. So it's pretty exciting to see that happen on all 3 levels.
That was going to be my question. You mostly answered is, how do you apply this to teams? And so in that situation, would each individual take the assessment for themselves, or do you have a version of this that they take on behalf of kind of the group?
No, they take it in themselves, because you're thriving, David. No one can tell you the extent to which you're thriving. So they take it individually, but then we do have a group report that de-identifies all of the individual data and pulls it together into a team. Here's
Okay.
how the team's doing. which is great for the team to know, to be able to make some decisions, but also for the leader, for the manager to be able to
Yeah.
say, oh, wow, I've got it. Because you can then quickly see, I have got a team that we haven't been talking about it, but like half the group is about to burn out. You can start to really see that super clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
know
I
we're
put it in the chat too if you want to go deeper or get certified. Renee, Rick's mentioned being certified in the chat. And so I just put the link there. We do certify coaches in this framework and methodology so that you can apply it with your clients. And it's actually accredited through ICF for continuing education units as well.
What I love about this is there's so much discussion about the importance of measurement, which is missing from some coaching approaches. So it's great to see that you have this as an option.
That's great. We love the science. We love the science. We also love human experience. This is like, let's use the science to help people open new pathways for their own development individually and collectively as teams. So, but yes, thank you. Thank you. And thank you guys for showing up. We really appreciate it. For sure.
And engaging.
Any questions that you have, this session was really for you. So any questions that you have, feel free to reach out to either Kate or me.